picture. Hi, Josh.
Hey, Miss D. How you doing?
Why does everybody always call me Miss D? You can call me D. How you doing?
I'm good.
It's
Today's
good to see you. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. You are always welcome here at Unleashed. We about to unleash the city around here.
Yes.
We got some things to do.
Yes, we do.
All right. Before we get into all that, Mr. Josh, tell me a little bit about you.
So I am from Georgia. My whole family
Grady baby?
is. I'm not a Grady baby. I'm not a
Close
Grady
to Grady baby?
Nothing's wrong with Grady babies. My cousins are Grady babies. But I was actually born in Augusta, Georgia.
All right.
My parents are both from a rural town called Warrenton, Georgia. Warren County, Georgia.
Okay, good old country boy.
Yes.
All right, now.
Yes. And so I grew up, was born over there, and then my mother actually moved in 1989 to Columbus, Georgia.
Ooh,
and then after that,
country,
Columbus is a city.
No,
That's a city.
Okay.
It's a city. I was there for 12 years. And then moved to Noonan and graduated high school in Noonan in 2002.
Well, I like, what kind, you talk, okay, so you've been in a lot of different parts, and now you are a resident right here in the city of Atlanta. What side of Atlanta are you in?
So I'm in Southwest.
I'm in West End.
Yes.
West End, y'all.
Yeah.
West End is not what it used to be.
It's not. And it's funny because, after I graduated high school in 2002, I went to Morehouse for college in West End.
Oh, wow.
And so, looking at West End 15 years ago versus now, it's totally different. I remember one of the first things that they tell us when we go on campus is, don't go out into the neighborhoods.
Ooh,
which I think now, being a resident of the neighborhood, I feel slightly offended by that.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're telling the people who can really help change this neighborhood and make it better to not even interact with the people around it.
It's the same for us. I have the school on Peachtree,
right?
And Georgia State is 2 blocks over, and they tell them don't go on that side of 5 Points.
Right.
They won't. They're not securing them on that side of 5 Points, and that's sad that our city has come to that.
And it's like you're segmenting off parts of the city and saying that, just because certain people are over there, or certain people who may have some issues and they may need help on them, you don't want people to interact with them. And one of the things that I've always learned, I'm a student of history, is that, change has always been driven by young people.
Yes,
we see that when Dr. King was around changing the world, he was a young man. He was in his late 20s, early 30s. When he was assassinated, he was 39 years old. That's a young man. That's a very young man. And look at all the good stuff that he did in changing the world. And to hear when young people are told not to interact with the community because they're saying it's not safe. First off, there's a problem that it's not safe.
That's a problem, because that's your job to keep me safe.
To make sure that wherever you go in the city,
if I pay taxes and I live here, it's your job to keep me safe.
Regardless of whether I live on Bankhead or in Buckhead, I need to be safe.
I love it.
So yeah, and so when I went to Morehouse, I was a student leader there. I ran for freshman class senator and won. I was
the senator at Morehouse.
I was the student trustee. So I got an opportunity to. You can. You definitely can. You definitely can. And so when I was a student trustee, one of the things that I really gained from that leadership experience was learning how institutions and boards and things like that work.
Yes.
Learning it from a holistic perspective and learning to listen to other people's perspectives on how things can actually be changed too.
And that's the biggest thing I see with our young people. I feel like they don't feel like their voice matters. How do we change that? Because I love the fact that you're a Morehouse grad, but the 80% of our community is not.
Right.
So they've taken to Facebook and Twitter and created their own little niche, and that's just where they function. So they don't think outside the box that they can actually be a part of the change. So what do you say to that?
So I don't think it's that they're not thinking outside of the box, that they're not thinking outside of the box. We're not thinking outside of the box. I think it involves reaching people where they are. If this young generation is interactive on social media, if they're going on Instagram, Facebook, and they need to be connected to services that their city, that their county, that their state provides for them, you got to go there and meet them where they are.
Yes.
You can't say that, I have this great program that's available, but if it's not touching the people and actually changing their lives, then what good is it? Because we put so much money behind policy, behind programs and things like that, but are they getting to the people who need them the most?
Actually need them.
And as a young person, I realized that even from some of the work that I was doing in my neighborhood, I was the public safety chair for my neighborhood planning unit for the last 2 years.
And that's in the West End?
In West End, in Southwest Atlanta primarily. So it's not just West End, it's a cluster of neighborhoods throughout Southwest Atlanta. And I went to a forum on Obama's 21st Century Policing Initiative that Zone 4 Police Precinct was doing. And I kept hearing in the room, people were saying, these young people are the perpetrators of all these crimes, these young people are doing all of this. And I just raised my hand, and I was just like, I'm 31 years old at the time, and I'm the youngest person at the table. How can we keep talking at people and not listening to what young people actually want to hear? Yes, young people are sometimes the perpetrators of the crimes in our neighborhoods, but oftentimes they're the victims too. Right. So are we having the conversations with them to understand their perspective of what it means like to be a young person, a teenager living in the neighborhood? We often don't think that their voice matters, and in actuality it does, because if we don't take care of young people, then we're not taking care of our future generations.
Where we're going, and that saddens me. Yeah. That's one of the things. That's one of the platforms that I totally stand on, is taking people from where they are and giving them the tools that they need to have a better tomorrow.
Right.
So I love the fact that you're including that in the community aspect of it. I love the fact that you want them included in the conversation at the table. So of course, what you said was we're basically going to use all of the tools, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram. Do you do many roundtables?
I do. Well, actually, let me take that back. I don't necessarily do a whole lot of them, but I think that that's important to pull different constituencies, whether it be young people, old people, because often what happens is that so many people are making decisions in a room, and everybody that's impacted by those decisions is actually not in that room.
Okay.
So in terms of roundtables per se about my campaign, I think it's something that's good to do. I'll tell you one story about a young person and how I understand the importance of hearing their voice was. There's this young man that I call my son now. I affectionately call him my son.
Yes.
But I met him about 2.5 years ago when I was coming home from getting my haircut on a Friday afternoon. And he was walking in the middle of the street, jaywalking. And so I'm coming over a hill and almost hit him. And he didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything of it. He went on about his business, and so did I. And then about an hour or so later, I'm sitting in the kitchen, and I look out the front window, and there's the same kid that I almost hit in the street sitting on the porch directly across the street from my house. And it was cold that day. It was the first cold day in about 2015.
Wow.
So I went and asked him, I was like, hey, do you want to come sit inside? And he said, yeah. Talked to him, found out he's a junior at the high school, Washington High School, Booker T. Washington High School, younger brother, younger sister, mom, single parent. His mom came about an hour or so later, and she was like, thank you so much for letting him sit inside. But he could have stayed outside. She was like, he's been being disrespectful, he's been skipping school, doing all the typical things that teenagers do.
Young people do, especially when they don't have an outlet.
When they don't have an outlet or opportunity.
But where can they go? Like, we have all these nice parks that close at 8 o'clock. What do they do?
I think you need to allocate resources to things in their community that they enjoy doing. And that starts by asking them what it is that you want to do.
What is it that positive?
Exactly.
What can we do for you?
Exactly.
So that you don't destroy our property.
Yep. And so, like, even the same thing with Zay. So, like, that same time, I looked at him because I grew up in a single parent home. My mom, was working at Georgia Power, doing the best that she could every single day. But she couldn't provide for me the things that I needed from a male perspective. Oh, no. And so I realized that with that young man that it was important for me to step in where somebody didn't step up for me. And so I just started mentoring him because I saw that he was a young man that clearly could go one way or the other. And so took him to get his first suit, taught him how to tie a tie, taught him how to write a resume, business, life skills,
they don't know that
how to interview for a job, because it's like, how can you expect somebody to know how to do something if they've never been taught that? And here we are, fast forward 2.5 years later, that same young man that was skipping school, doing all those negative things, is at my alma mater, Morehouse College, on full scholarship.
That's what I call making a difference. That's what I get excited about. I love the fact that I think it's going to take a whole team of younger people to actually change, because most young people they don't feel like they're in the same genre with someone 40 years older. They don't even speak the same language.
Right.
So we've got to figure out how to bridge the gap. One of the things that you were talking about is creating better public safety through businesses.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
And so I think, when you talk about public safety, regardless of whether you're 2 or whether you're 100, is something that's on everybody's mind. And so when I think about when I want to go shop, I want to make sure that when I'm going to shop, I'm not having to look over my shoulder worrying about if somebody's going to be doing something negative. And that's sad that it happens in our neighborhoods. We don't hear we hear the issues that are going on in Buckhead, but are we dealing with the issues in our own neighborhood too? And I think all of that ties back to economic opportunity. When people don't have a way to be able to make a better living for themselves, and all they can do is sit around all day trying to figure it out, and nobody's really helping them figure it out, then often at times that leads to crime. Because we know, again, if young people They need an outlet. They have to have an outlet to be able to do something.
All they know is what they need.
Exactly.
So having to go rob and steal and to take it from people that they see every day, that they even perceive has it, because they don't even begin to understand what that person's issues are.
Right.
And I think that as we begin to value them, they will value themselves. But until they value themselves, they're not going to value anyone else.
Absolutely. And I think it's also fundamental in understanding how a government values its people too.
Yes.
Because, a lot of people don't even understand what county commissions do. But the county commission, from a public safety standpoint, runs the county jail. That's the largest line item in the expense for our entire budget. Wow. We spend $80 million to lock people up. That says a lot about a society that spends that much money to lock people up, but not giving opportunities.
But won't put it towards their education.
Absolutely.
Or trade school. I think, and it's sad, and that's big to my heart. Education has just become big business in America. A lot of governments actually allow their children to go to school at no charge, to get a trade. They plan that out for them. We don't do that. I've got students in my school with over $60,000 in debt and no job.
Yeah, and then they're getting the phone calls asking them from Sallie Mae and everything to pay that back, and
that's stressful.
It's extremely stressful because you're trying to, that you're trying to go to work every day or trying to do something better every single day, but yet on the back of your back you have this big burden of debt that's going to take you many years to have to pay off. And I think, back to your point, trade school. Everybody is not designed to go to college, and I think we just have to be fundamental and truthful when we say that.
And then if we're going to spend the $80 million to put them in jail, what are we doing to recondition them and train them so that they have something to do when they re-enter society?
Absolutely.
That's not the same thing. Because then when they come back, now they have that ding across them.
Yep.
So now what?
You have to keep checking the box. I think what it needs to be, I don't believe the government should be all things for all people. I believe, like yourself, you have a school. Connecting with people in the community who are already doing the work and making sure that it's connecting to the people, because you have an outreach of people that I may never even be able to touch. Obviously, I'm here on your radio show being able to touch people that I may have never been able to actually have a conversation with. But it's like, okay, so here I am running for elected office. So what policies am I going to be able to help put in place that are going to be able to touch the people that you help already? Don't reinvent the wheel. Make sure that you're reaching out and partnering with businesses and schools and so on and so forth in the community, so when people do leave, that they're connected to the right folks to help them start their life.
And that's what, I am a woman of faith, and God is number one.
Absolutely.
In my life. And I really think that if we go back to real biblical principles, it wasn't social services that took care of our communities. We took care of our communities.
Absolutely.
If we wanted to see something different or see something change, then we stood up and did it. I know of businesses that need interns. That even offering an intern something to do for 2 hours after high school.
Right.
That is something to give them a positive light that they may not see in their immediate box. Or it might support that single mother who can't really be there between 3 and 7 when something really, really, really negative could happen.
Absolutely.
So I love
It's interesting you mentioned that too. There's another Miss D who owns a cafe over in my neighborhood, Miss D's Cafe and Catering. One of the things that I admire the most about her and you is just like the work that y'all do to help young people. So she hires on the weekend some of the students from some of the high schools to actually work in her restaurant, because it's giving them an opportunity. Like, I've always felt like if you give people the opportunity, point blank, everybody wakes up every single day wanting to make their life better. In the same amount of time to be able to do that. But how are they being connected to the services and things like that
to the people that can help push them? And we were young. We didn't believe or listen to too much our parents said. So,
but now as adults, we see how real it was.
I talk about it all the time. This generation goes off kind of what they feel. If it feels good, I'll do it. If it don't feel good, I don't want to do that. So it's a particular way you kind of got to speak to them at a particular time. I have them all the way from 16 on up to 65.
Right.
So
so you see the range.
And the range and the temperance, and they're so easy to give up. Well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to deal with that. It's just so easy. But if we let them, it's got to be somebody that says, no, you can do this.
Right.
No, you can push through. No, you can make it.
Right.
Let me help you.
It's funny, even thinking about that, it just makes me think about my own, like how I literally have resilience in my blood. My mom grew up on a farm. And my grandparents were uneducated folk who didn't know anything but farming. All they had were third grade educations. But my mom knew that Every morning she had to get up at 4 o'clock and go out there and work on the farm before she went to school. Right. And then when she came home from school, had to be back out there on the farm. So it's work ethic and resilience. But she knew. She was like, she told my granddad, she was like, I don't want to do this. And I do not want to do this.
I'm so glad you said it, because I get frustrated sometimes. I get like, okay, you know what? But you have to do it.
Yeah.
If you give yourself the option to quit, you might take it.
Exactly.
But if you don't have an option to quit or an option to give up, you will persevere.
Yep. And so, like, seeing the whole story with my mom going off, go to college. She was the first one in her family to go to college. I was the first male in my family to go to college. I know what it takes. There's always going to be some door that's going to be closed in your face. There's always going to be somebody that's going to tell you no, but you got to have that resilient spirit. And you got to just keep fighting for it. Got to keep fighting for it.
One of the things I want to hit on, two things I want to hit on, homelessness. Because, I'm a Peachtree resident. I'm right there on Peachtree. What are we going to do about this epidemic?
I think we need to make sure that we are first connecting people to the services. Because there are services that are out there. But there are, first off, not enough beds in Fulton County to house the homeless population that we have.
But we have 80 million going to jail.
Right. Okay. Right. We got all these vacant buildings that are downtown that we can do some type of public-private partnership to make sure that they're renovated to connect people. Because we know that you can connect people to mental health services all day long. But until they have housing stability, that stuff is not going to stick. So we have to make sure that people have a roof over their head every single day, somewhere that they can actually sleep and be comfortable. When I was at this, the Fight for 15 rally on Labor Day, I met so many people out there who were working and homeless. Nobody who works 40 hours a week should ever be homeless. Like, one person was telling me that they were living in a tent behind the fast food restaurant that they worked at.
Yeah, I saw one young college student that actually did that.
Like, that to me, if we're living in the city of Atlanta, where all of this opportunity and all of these fancy buildings and everything is up around us.
But they's putting 80 million to lock folk up.
But not enough money to make sure that people have economic opportunity and stable housing. We got to, call it what it is and address it.
But we just built that whole little rail car thing.
The little streetcar. That actually a lot of homeless people actually ride around on so they can have shelter all day long.
What?
Yes, I've seen that with my own eyes.
That had to cost a lot of money.
I'm sure, but that to me is partly because that's the City of Atlanta initiative. But we need to make sure that we're connecting with the city, the county, and the state to make sure that all of those dollars are used most efficiently and to impact the people that it's going to touch the most. Because we know that with public policy, it's always the most marginalized folks who are impacted by how the money and policy is spent.
So, two things I want to say. So, tell me what, for the people. Hey, Bishop. Tell us what a commissioner does in total. I know they're in control of the jails.
Right. So, from a budgetary standpoint, you think about a lot of the social services that are provided to residents. So, the commission sets the budget for the county. So, that's the public safety budget, the sheriff's office, the criminal justice system, your courts. So all of your courts are funded by the county commission. Your public health department, something that you think about our people need connection to services. That's all funded by your county commission.
Because a lot of that homelessness is mental health.
Absolutely.
Them people not right.
Yeah. They just need to be connected to services. And, I work in healthcare professionally, so I've seen it, like walking into, various healthcare offices as clients and seeing that people just need to be connected to services. And when we don't address those issues and make sure that we have healthy citizens is good for business. Yeah. Healthy citizens is good for education, so on and so forth. Everything.
It's good for our property taxes.
Exactly.
I promise you, they're going to be busting these homeless people out of here now that dome is up.
I hope not.
That Mercedes dome.
I hope not.
You gonna let the visitors step over the people as they walk from the parking garage to the dome?
We shouldn't keep stepping over. That's such a metaphorical thing, though, because people step over them. Yeah. And it's like we think about those people as disposable and forgettable, but nobody should be thought of that way. I remember when I lost my job and I lost my house. Yeah. I lost my car and had all of my stuff put out on the street. And I know what the privilege that I had to get an education. I realized all of that stuff started to crumble right in front of me, and I had to see life from somebody else's lens. And I don't want to ever be thought of as being disposable. So why should I ever think of somebody else like that? And especially when you're an elected official, I think you have to always think about the most marginalized
that is definitely something that we need to talk about, because if you look at it, they just sold our underground. The city had owned the underground, then they sold it to a separate entity. And they want to do all this revitalization, but I don't think there's any affordable housing plan.
Right. And I think, again, it's like our governments operate in such silos. Like you got the city of Atlanta working over here, you got Fulton County working over here, you got the state of Georgia working over here. Why can't we all have a conversation and sit down and figure out how we're going to make all of this stuff work? Because affordable housing is a real issue. I mean, I live in West End. I see what's happening in my own neighborhood as people are being priced out of rent. Like where you could one day rent a whole house for $700. It's now double that cost 2 years later. Like, that's unsustainable.
But the minimum wage hasn't gone up
at all.
Hasn't gone up. Has not gone up in Georgia.
And we need to talk about a living wage for people. And one of the things that Fulton County actually did do last year was implement, starting the beginning of this year, was make sure that they're gradually going up to $15 per hour for county employees. And it was funny hearing the story of like a WIC counselor who said at 1 minute she's the counselor and the next minute she's the client. Because of the fact that she wasn't making enough money to be able to keep a roof over her head and make sure that she was able to take care of their families. And again, anybody that works every single day, does the best that they can, should not have to worry about keeping a roof over their head and being able to live. We got to just start having those fundamental conversations.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Lastly, before you get, why? Two things. Why is the water bill so high, and why are the property taxes so high?
So water bill, that's again, City of Atlanta.
Mr. Commissioner.
City of Atlanta operates the water. So that's how we talk about people, making sure that people are informed about how their government works.
Okay.
So the City of Atlanta runs the Department of Watershed.
For everybody?
For everybody that's in the City of Atlanta.
What about Fulton?
So Fulton County has most of the municipalities. So every individual city operates the water and those types of things.
So City of Atlanta keep playing with my water?
Talk to your city council person for that. But I can connect you with them.
I'm coming for you.
I can connect you with them.
I'm coming for you.
But then property taxes. Property taxes is a real thing.
It's really sad. People are saying they can't keep their homes.
Yeah. And that's a sad situation. And the part of it is that the county was not doing what their work that they were supposed to be doing. Why are we still assessing properties